Part of the magic of Hart's law is in how the depth of the liquidity, as in how many of the token supply in liquidity, is bonded with other tokens and how this impacts their rate of movement compared to each other with or without buyers. This is how ecosystems are created, and this is one of the most beautiful dynamics being played out on Pulsechain and being proven through the Atropa ecosystem. This is DeFi in 5. Hart's law, liquidity depth, and dragging. Hart's law is simple. Tokens that are bonded together by liquidity move together. You can make an ecosystem of tokens that rise together. As the saying goes, a rising tide lifts all boats. Except in this case, the tide is arbitrage bots, which are rebalancing pools for profit. The liquidity depth here in this example is showing DAI or pDAI. It shows that the biggest liquidity pool is with Atropa, which is shown in orange. It has the biggest liquidity depth of 13.33%. The second is with 2. I'm going to show visually and clearly how this dynamic has played out across Pulsechain and what it actually means. So Atropa and pDAI. Here, the top chart is Atropa, and I've shown it in the 7 phases to clearly show visually how this bonding works. So this is Atropa and pDAI, each obviously being the biggest liquidity pool since Atropa's launch. You can see that both are basically moving in sync. One goes up, the other goes up. If one goes down, the other goes down. So pDAI is pumping, it's dragging Atropa. If Atropa is pumping, it's dragging pDAI. If pDAI is dumping, it's dragging Atropa. If Atropa is dumping, it's dragging pDAI. Mostly, up until this point, it has been pDAI that has been moving Atropa. Wrapped Pulsechain, on the other hand, was moving opposite during phase 1 and 2. You can see pDAI was going up during phase 1 and then going down during phase 2. But Wrapped Pulsechain was the opposite. Wrapped Pulsechain was moving down and then moving up during phase 2. However, you can see clearly during stage 1 and 2, they were moving independently, but then from 3, 4, 5, and 6, the liquidity depth increased to such a size that the bonding became tighter, so that even during 3, when pDAI was going up, Pulsechain was mostly going up. When pDAI was going down, Pulsechain was going down. When pDAI was going up, Pulsechain was going up. When pDAI was going down, Pulsechain was going down. But then came the pDAI FUD event, which is highlighted in the orange box. And this is where things started to change, because this is where liquidity was removed from pDAI. And you can see very clearly they have begun to now move independently. You can see pDAI, since that event, has traveled up, but Pulsechain has gone up, and back to down. It's moved basically independently based on the fact that the liquidity bonding has been severed. So you can really think of it like a stretchy rope and people holding the rope. In this instance, the people are the different tokens. So Atropa, pDAI, Pulse. So if pDAI sprints, then Atropa holding on to pDAI sprints with it. And Pulsechain holding on to Atropa or pDAI also gets dragged along with it. Now let's make it clearer here so you can see pDAI, and the biggest pool by far here is Atropa, as I mentioned earlier, 33.3%. And then 2, let's now have a look at pDAI and 2. So we've seen how pDAI works with Atropa and Pulsechain. Let's have a look at what it does now with 2. Now with 2, it's on pDAI. You can see here it's 0.99%. It's still its second biggest pool, but only 0.99% of the total supply of pDAI is in the liquidity pool with 2. But for 2, 60%, over 60% of its liquidity is with pDAI. So what does this mean? This means that pDAI will drag it, but it won't drag pDAI because pDAI has all the power compared to its overall pools. Its second pool is the upside down R, which is 22.9%. Here, it's clear to see, once again, the power pDAI has over 2. So 2 is the bottom chart. I haven't shown the numbers, but you can see very clearly that they're essentially moving in sync. But look what happens when you price 2 against pDAI. Basically, they're moving sideways. So this is similar to the Atropa and pDAI chart, which I've shown previous videos, and you can check for yourself. Because the bonding is so tight against the US dollar, they're basically moving together. And you can see that in the ratio where they're basically moving sideways, fluctuating and magnetizing towards this 2 point. But now overlay the upside down R with 2. The upside down R is the blue bars in the bottom chart overlaid with the 2 and pDAI. And you can see that the upside down R is being also heavily manipulated by what is happening with 2 compared to pDAI. So you can see clearly the upside down R is being dragged with it. So in other words, the deeper and more interconnected the liquidity, the more they are influenced by each other. This is part of Hart's law. And this is how anyone can design liquidity to create price movements and momentums based on liquidity depths. And this is something that I've been talking about, particularly with the minters, the Atropa ecosystem minters, and how you can design liquidity there. So hopefully this starts to give some clues and some ideas and inspirations for how people can start to design ecosystems around these minter tokens. This is DeFi in 5. Stay tuned for the next episode on liquidity.